Hello, friends. This past week, the Biden administration released the first ever national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. The statement by the White House said, "This national strategy to counter anti-Semitism outlines a whole-of-society approach organized in 4 pillars of action that address key themes and threats raised by over 1,000 diverse stakeholders across the Jewish community and beyond." The strategy includes over 100 meaningful actions government agencies will take to increase understanding of anti-Semitism and its threat to American democracy, protect Jewish institutions and communities, reverse the normalization of anti-Semitism, and build cross-community solidarity. The strategy also includes over 100 calls to action for Congress, state and local governments, tech companies, and others to counter anti-Semitism. In the letter accompanying the strategy, President Biden wrote that, quote, "Protecting the Jewish community from anti-Semitism is essential to our broader fight against all forms of hate, bigotry, and bias, and to our broader vision of a thriving, inclusive, and diverse democracy." End quote. I've read the document that is more than 50 pages, and it is quite impressive. It includes new actions to counter anti-Semitism on college campuses and online. The document explicitly recognizes that the United States has recently experienced an alarming increase in anti-Semitic incidents, among other acts of hatred. It says that American Jews account for 2.4% of the population of the United States, but they're victims of 63% of reported religiously motivated hate crimes, according to the FBI. While anti-Semitic incidents most directly and intensely affect the Jewish community, anti-Semitism threatens all of us. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories fuel other forms of hatred, discrimination, and bias, including discrimination against other religious minorities, racism, sexism, and anti-LGBTQI hate. Anti-Semitism seeks to divide Americans from one another, erodes trust in government and non-governmental agencies, and undermines our democracy. The document goes on to state that, informed by input from over 1,000 stakeholders from every sector of American society, it outlines, as I mentioned, over 100 new actions that executive branch agencies have committed to take in order to counter anti-Semitism, all of which will be completed within the year. That's a bold and ambitious statement. It goes on to say that the strategy also calls on Congress to enact legislation that would help counter anti-Semitism and urges every sector of society to mobilize against this age-old hatred, including state and local governments, civil society, schools and academic institutions, the tech sector, businesses, and diverse religious communities. So what are these 4 pillars? Let me try to briefly summarize. Pillar 1 includes focus is to increase awareness and understanding of anti-Semitism, including its threat to America, and broaden appreciation of the Jewish American heritage. In 2024, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum will launch the first ever US-based Holocaust Education Research Center. Once the new center is fully operational, it will undertake systematic, rigorous, and actionable research into teaching and learning about the Holocaust and study the impact and effectiveness of Holocaust education in U.S. agencies. It will also create new materials on contemporary anti-Semitism and Jewish American heritage and history. The U.S. government will also bolster research on anti-Semitism, its impact on American society, and its intersection with other forms of hate through funding opportunities, resources, and outreach from several agencies. Furthermore, U.S. government will raise awareness on these topics both inside and outside of classroom environments, including in the workplace, in museums and libraries, and in the media. Whew. Pillar number 2 is about improving safety and security for Jewish communities. It says that the National Security Council will amplify financial, technical, and training assistance offered to state and local partners, establishing and expanding these community-based prevention efforts. The administration calls on Congress to fully fund its 2024 budget request for $360 million for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, which is a $55 million increase above the enacted 2023 grant. The government intends to put its money where its mouth is. Pillar number 3, reverse the normalization of anti-Semitism and counter anti-Semitic discrimination. Document states that one of the most alarming aspects of the current wave of anti-Semitism is the extent to which it has become normalized. Government will counter anti-Semitism in K-12 schools and on college campuses. The Department of Education will launch an anti-Semitism awareness campaign this year in 2023. The final pillar, pillar number 4, builds cross-community solidarity and collective action to counter hate. The administration plans to identify and support the scaling of the most effective cross-community solidarity building efforts to counter hate, focusing on anti-Semitism. The White House Office of Public Engagement will launch the Ally Challenge, inviting Americans to describe their acts of allyship with Jewish and other communities that are not their own. And to expand and mobilize multi-faith partnerships, the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, alongside federal agencies and diverse faith leaders, will produce a toolkit for faith communities on standing in solidarity with other religious communities to counter anti-Semitism and other forms of hate. Organizations from around the country have committed to participating in education and advocacy in support of this national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. We're talking from the National Basketball Association to the National Action Network, the National Urban League, and the National Asian American Foundation. In addition, the Jewish Council of Public Affairs will build coalitions that bring together Jewish organizations and individuals, together with diverse racial, ethnic, faith, and civic leaders, groups to combat discrimination, bigotry, and exclusion, and protect democracy. These coalitions will provide guidance, best practices, advocacy tools, model legislation, and other resources to enable the 125 local Jewish community relations councils across the country to enlist and empower their communities in the fight against anti-Semitism, hate, and anti-democratic extremism. While many of these actions include encouraging Congress and other governmental agencies to take their own actions, there has been bipartisan praise from lawmakers and the more than 25 Jewish organizations that provided input and have highly praised the national strategy. I'd like to share a few notable public responses. Jonathan Greenblatt, the ADL CEO, said, "It's particularly notable that this approach recognizes that anti-Semitism is not about politics, it's about principles. We are pleased that this strategy comprehensively addresses hate and anti-Semitism on campus, online, and from extremists on both the far right and the far left." The great American Jewish leader Abraham Foxman, who was the director emeritus of the ADL, wrote, "In my 50 years of fighting anti-Semitism, I never imagined I would witness such a historic event. An American government publicly telling Jews in the world that Jews will not stand alone in their fight against this horrific disease. Thank you." Ted Deutsch, the CEO of the American Jewish Committee, writes, "We salute the President's plan for additional Homeland Security funding and streamlined hate crimes, reporting and enforcement standards, as well as increasing educational resources from the federal government, including educating about anti-Semitism and all diversity trainings." The Rabbinical Assembly put out a note that said, "The emphasis on Holocaust education, particularly in K through 12 schools and college campuses, lays a vital foundation for nurturing understanding and eradicating bigotry. As rabbis dedicated to promoting understanding, justice, and compassion, we look forward to collaborating with the Biden administration, Congress, and all stakeholders involved to ensure the effective implementation of this timely and historic initiative." The National Jewish Leadership Statement, which included 21 signatories, said, "The White House engaged with a wide array of stakeholders and conducted exhaustive interagency policy development, culminating in today's unveiling of the administration's national strategy. The administration's strategy also incorporates a commitment to respect the civil rights and liberties of all Americans. The fight against anti-Semitism need not infringe on the freedom of speech, a fundamental pillar of our democracy. On the contrary, the administration's efforts to strengthen our democracy weaken anti-Semitism's growing foothold. As President Biden has said, evil will not win. Hate will not prevail. The venom and violence of anti-Semitism will not be the story of our time." End quote. Wow. It's amazing. This would be hardly imaginable 6 months ago. And if you're interested in more information about this landmark new national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, you can participate in a webinar tomorrow, Wednesday, May 31st at 11:30 a.m. our time, called "Fighting Hate from Home, the White House and the ADL Take You Inside the New Anti-Semitism Strategy." The webinar is free, but you must register, which you can do simply by going on Google ADL, go on their website, and you can click on and register. So this is an amazing moment in American history, and we're all witnesses, and hopefully we'll have a significant impact and significantly deride and impact the rise in anti-Semitism that has been such a deep concern for all of us. My friends, stay safe and be well. Shalom uvracha, peace and blessings.